Thank you all for joining us here today during this really unprecedented situation we find ourselves here in the state of Michigan and in the world as a whole. I want to start off by really talking about some of the things that the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity are doing in this time of crisis. We'll specifically talk about unemployment insurance, but we really have three focuses. First is to make sure that we drive down the curve of spread of COVID-19 by helping the governor implement the Stay Safe, Stay Home Act. The executive order she put in place and extended, which is really designed to help lessen the pain that we experience economically and then, of course, in this health crisis. Second is to make sure that we get emergency benefits to individuals and to businesses through this crisis period of time to help them also be able to recover and rebuild as we come out of the crisis. And then third is to make sure that we're planning for the restart and recovery of our economy. We'll talk more about many of those other pieces, I think, as time goes on. But really specifically, I want to make sure that we talk about unemployment insurance today, given the importance of those emergency benefits to individuals. We're committed to making sure that every Michigander who's eligible for unemployment benefits receives them. We've seen historic increases in the need and, of course, in the filing for unemployment insurance as well because of COVID-19. As I mentioned yesterday, over 1 million people in the state of Michigan, almost a quarter of our workforce, have filed for unemployment benefits so far. We aren't alone in seeing these large increases. In fact, California and Pennsylvania are the only states that are higher than us. But Michigan is higher than all Great Lakes states. Michigan is higher than the state of New York, which also has been heavily hit by COVID-19. We've greatly expanded our web servers. We're adding hundreds of staff, but our state system and the state systems across the country for unemployment insurance have struggled to cope with these historic numbers. But the benefits that they provide are crucial for families to put food on the table, to pay their bills, to purchase prescription drugs, and to have dollars to be able to re-enter the economy when businesses start reopening. Most of those eligible have been able to file. And so far, the state of Michigan has paid out $350 million to more than 600,000 Michiganders. That number is only going to grow as we move forward and as the days and weeks continue to tick away. But we recognize that this is little comfort to the thousands who are worried about their economic future and who still need some additional help from us to complete their claims. We understand how frustrating the delays can be during this time. And what keeps us working around the clock is the commitment that we won't rest until everyone is helped. Be assured, claims are backdated to the date on which a worker was laid off because of COVID-19, regardless of how much time has passed. The date you file your claim will not impact or affect the benefits that you receive. You can file, and most people have filed online, more than 90% at michigan.gov/UIA. And yesterday, though, the state's IT systems, including the unemployment website, had struggled to accept claims for about 6 hours. We know that the unemployment site is up today and is receiving claims. The impacts to the systems were not just unemployment, but across state government, including the Secretary of State and Department of Health and Human Services, whose systems also struggled to receive applications and logins. The state's IT department, DTMB, assures us that they've added additional server capacity, and it seems to be working. As of last night, we saw higher traffic than at any point in the last few weeks. To help our website traffic, though, and to help more people file claims and receive benefits, we're again asking individuals to file by last name. So if your last name begins with A through L, you could file Monday, Wednesday, or Friday. If your last name begins with M through Z, you can file Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So today, when I'm speaking to you on a Tuesday, that would be M through Z. For anyone who misses their day, they can file on Saturday. We're also asking that if you can consider filing during off-peak hours. That's after 8 p.m. The website is available for applications 24 hours a day. And so trying after 8 p.m. will help assure us that we can get as many individuals as possible filed and registered and process their claims as quickly as possible. If you filed your claim and you've certified already, we ask that you try not to log back onto the system to make it easier for fellow Michiganders to access their accounts and file claims. For those who need additional help, though, we've added hundreds of call center staff and have hundreds more on the way. We've expanded the days and hours of our call center operations, and created a dedicated team just to resolving the IT technical issues like forgotten passwords, locked accounts, and authentication codes that many of you have reported to us have been issues. But this still isn't good enough. We have to do better to ensure that everyone gets the help they need. We continue to ask for your patience as we work to process your claims. Out of the million who filed claims so far, about 70% have been approved. And thanks to the Federal CARES Act, most of those denied are likely eligible for benefits now. These include small business owners and those not traditionally covered by benefits, the self-employed worker, the 1099 worker, the gig economy worker, independent contractors, and low-wage workers. It also includes individuals who have had their unemployment benefits expire in the most recent time frame. If you're unable to work due to COVID-19 and you fit in one of these categories, you could apply for the pandemic unemployment insurance benefits starting this week at michigan.gov/UIA. Again, michigan.gov/UIA. And we're again asking you to file by last week and try those off-peak hours after 8 p.m. If you've already applied, there's no reason to reapply. Benefits will start flowing in the next few weeks, and we'll make sure that for those who who've already applied, that we get information to you on the next steps to take to get those benefits. As a reminder, the governor, under executive order last month, had previously extended benefits to sick workers without paid time off, or those who are quarantined. Those who are unexpectedly caring for loved ones, again, without some sort of paid time off, like a child or like a family member who is sick. Individuals who would not be eligible under this new benefit include those who do have some paid sick time or other paid leave and are taking that. Individuals who can telework with pay at an equivalent rate, and individuals who quit work without cause to obtain unemployment insurance benefits. We also know that we've seen an increase, and we've made sure to increase benefits, which will automatically be applied to individuals' accounts. So the duration of benefits now go from 20 weeks to 39 weeks. And as of last Wednesday, we were one of the first and few states to begin sending out the additional $600 a week in federal unemployment benefits. That's on top of the up to $362 provided by the state of Michigan. These payments are dispersed with regular benefits and will last until the end of July. You know, with this expanded capacity, this added eligibility and increased benefits, we're working very hard to make sure that we provide the emergency relief needed to weather this crisis to Michiganders across our state. We understand the deep economic pain associated with COVID-19 and appreciate your patience as we work to process the historic need for benefits. We're committed to getting our economy back up and running, but we need to get the response to this health crisis right. Flattening the curve of transmission is the most important thing we can do to minimize the long-term economic impact to our state and make sure we can get our economy back to work. Thank you. I'll open it up for questions now.
Thank you, Jeff. I am going to be using the live event Q&A panel for those of you who've joined. If you're with the media and you have questions, please submit them using the Q&A function, and I will be reading them off. All right. The first one we have is from Kyle Mellon. What preparations were taken by the administration prior to the governor's March 16 order expanding unemployment benefits to handle the surge of unemployment claims?
Sure, that's a good question. So I'm going to let Steve Gray, who's also on the call, who's director of the Unemployment Insurance Agency, answer some of those questions. But I want to talk about some of the upgrades that have happened to our phone systems prior to the emergency. And then the fact that we, of course, were dedicating staff as soon as we knew that the emergency order was coming down, trying to make sure that we had as many individuals on the phones and as many people helping customers as possible. Steve, do you want to talk about the upgrades to the IT and phone systems? And I can maybe pick up the latter part of it.
Sure. Thank you, Jeff. So we added server capacity. We added 4 new servers even before the whole thing started, just to make sure that we had enough capacity, and then we also we upgraded our phone system in September. That actually put us in a pretty good spot, because one of the main things it allowed us to do was take calls from any part of the agency, and so rather than having to be in a specific location or a specific call center, we could assign people to get on the phones from any place in the agency. It also allowed us to get our staff home and working and taking calls from home so they could be safe.
That's right. So we quickly moved to make sure that we had enough resources in place. We've contracted with third-party call centers to help supplement our call center staff. We're shifting staff over from other LEO agencies and other agencies within state government, both to help deal with customer issues, but also to deal with those technical issues. And then we're also partnering with the Michigan Works Agency to train many of their staff who will help be able to supplement us as time goes on. So it's an important question. It's something we take very seriously. And while we've quadrupled the amount of people who've been working on customer intake and issues, we're going to increase that even more.
Okay, Lester Graham from Michigan Radio asks, are people who are afraid of potential exposure to the coronavirus or have underlying health concerns eligible for unemployment if they don't go to work because of those concerns?
So for individuals who are sick, for individuals who have that unexpected family or childcare situation, who are quarantined or who are immunocompromised in some way, they would be eligible for unemployment insurance at this point. For those who are not falling into that category, they would not.
All right, and Alethea with Gongwer is asking, with more than 1 million people filing so far, do you have an estimate on how many will file?
So I think it depends on the duration of some of the closures and some of the inability to go back to work. And so the question will be, what happens in the next few months? I think we still haven't seen the peak of this. This week, of course, will add, I think, quite a bit to the rolls, over 1 million people. But I think in the, what we expect is that right now we're about a quarter of, or just under a quarter of the state's workforce population.
All right, and Frank Witzel's asking, what do Michiganders need to do who can't get online or get through the phone line?
Steve, I'm going to ask you to answer that one.
So we've set up special hours on Saturdays for the phones that's reserved just for people that can't get online and still need to file an application. That we think that's a pretty small number of people, but we know that there's people out there that still haven't been able to do it. So we spent those special hours that we have between 7 and 2 p.m. on Saturday are reserved just for people that need to use the phones to file an application.
Thank you. And Alethea with Gongwer is following up with another question. Are people able to file within the 28-day window? Will that basically be waived for anyone who asks?
So if someone is unable to file because of pandemic, the COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in today, we will waive the window if that's the reason that they've become unemployed, and if that's the issue of why they're not getting through because of the overwhelming volume that we are seeing right now. So yes, individuals shouldn't worry about the 28 days if they're unemployed due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right, and Chad Livengood with Cranes has reached out. Jeff, what is the solvency of the unemployment fund and how many weeks can it sustain 600,000 people drawing on it at once?
So Chad, I think that's a good question. And I would say the trust fund at $4.6 billion before the emergency and the pandemic hit was one of the most well-funded in the state of Michigan for a state our size. What we've done is projections to say the question really is how many more people file and then how long the duration of these layoffs continues to be. So we've done some initial modeling through July, which is when many of the federal funds run out, and through the end of July, we think that on a conservative estimate, we would, of course, the trust fund would last. If you kind of have a middle ground estimate, we would probably expend around half of the trust fund through that period of time. We're looking at what, though, the federal government might provide in additional resources. And I think every federal dollar that comes in from pandemic unemployment assistance, certainly those dollars, the 600 extra dollars, the dollars for those newly eligible, is going to help us preserve the trust fund and be able to extend it.
Okay, and Dave Eggert is asking, are you considering relaxing or waiving the requirement that people file for unemployment each week? Is that an option?
So I'll turn it over to Steve, but really these are federal guidelines that the U.S. Department of Labor is requiring of us to be able to allow these dollars to flow out. But Steve, maybe you want to address that?
No, Jeff, that's exactly right. So we're required, in order to, you have to claim benefits every week in order to get the federal dollars. And so we certainly did look at that as a possibility, but we can't turn off the weekly certification requirement.
All right, and Lester Graham with Michigan Radio asks, for those not usually eligible, what kind of additional reporting requirements are there?
So
Steve, do you want to talk about the pandemic unemployment assistance application and what we're asking of them?
Sure. It's a relatively short application. It usually doesn't take people more than 15 minutes to complete. There's a few questions that they ask about what the reason for their separation is, and then they're given the opportunity to provide proof of wages to increase their weekly benefit amount. The certification that will happen every week, there'll be a special pandemic unemployment certification that they'll do. It'll be almost identical to the certification that you would for regular state unemployment benefits. And so they're checking to make sure that you're claiming benefits and that you continue to be eligible and you don't have any new outside income.
All right, and Kyle Mullen would like to know, how long are people eligible to apply for benefits after their employment begins?
After their unemployment begins?
Yeah, I believe, sorry.
Okay. So again, if it's related to the COVID-19, there are special rules in place, but we're not, we're not going to deny anybody if they have had a hard time getting on the website and their unemployment is due to COVID-19. Steve, the pandemic unemployment assistance has a longer period of time. I think it's backdated even to January for some folks who lost their job due to the pandemic, correct?
That's correct. You can go back to January the 27th and claim back to then with pandemic unemployment assistance. But we've set up a special for this particular situation, a good cause extension, so that we're not going to deny people right now, because the access to the phones and to our services has been intermittent at times, and so people just need to get in and do it as quick as they can, but we're not going to deny people because they're past the 28 days.
All right, and Cody Butler with WILX TV is asking, what is being done to make sure the online systems are able to stay online with more people applying for unemployment?
Cody, thanks for that question. And certainly, as we mentioned, I think yesterday and today, we've been working with the state's IT department, DTMB, to make sure that we add servers, additional servers, even beyond the load that we had previously added to the system. Making sure too that there's an ability for a large number of people to access the system at one time, which has been some of the issue. Even if we have large server capacity, you have to distribute that those number of individuals coming to the site to the various servers efficiently. We know that state government has had an issue with this overall, and that we were only one of a number of departments that had trouble with their website yesterday. And so we've been assured by DTMB that there are more servers online, that we're able to handle a large capacity and a larger number of people accessing this. We're going to continue to do everything possible and throw every piece of equipment and technology we can at this to make sure that people can get their benefits.
All right, and we have Justin Hicks with MLive. If a claimant elects to have income tax withheld from state unemployment benefits, Will that election carry over for the federal unemployment benefits without further action by the claimant? What about income tax on the federal stimulus payments?
Steve, do you want to take that one?
Yes. So it does carry over if they elect to have it withheld. It doesn't impact the stimulus payment though. That's coming from a different a different place. It's coming directly from the U.S. Treasury. So it just affects your state and federal taxes for unemployment benefits.
All right, and David Eggert is asking, are you considering relaxing or waiving the requirement that people file for unemployment each week? Is that an option?
So I think Steve had mentioned that previously, that that's a federal rule that we can't relax. It's every 2 weeks that they have to certify. The federal government still requires it of us.
All right, and Mackenzie Frost, because people have been waiting online for several hours, are calling over 100 times in a row, is there any thoughts on expanding the phone lines or hours to accommodate more people?
So yes, we continue to expand the phone lines. We continue to put more people on the phones. I think, as we mentioned, we've added hundreds of staff to the phone lines. We've also got about 500 in the pipeline of partners, contractors, and other staff that we're bringing on to make sure that we can serve as many people as possible. We've seen large increases in the volume of people who've been helped on a daily basis. And again, we've expanded the hours of the phone system and the days. So we've actually gone into the weekend now. We have mandatory overtime for our call center staff. So even when they're not on the phones, they're trying to clean up the claims and process the backlog that has come into us. So we're doing everything possible. We've shifted staff from around state government to be able to help.
All right, and Mackenzie had another follow-up. Will people be able to get their unemployment benefits if they go back to work before they get those benefits in the first place?
Steve, do you want to take that one?
Yes, because you certify 2 weeks for the prior 2 weeks, you'd still get the benefits that you receive if you went back to work in the subsequent week.
There's also the work share program where individuals could be working today with an employer having reduced the number of hours that they are being given. The work share program provides a payroll subsidy from UIA and now is being funded by the federal government. That also includes the extra $600 a week in pandemic unemployment assistance.
All right, and I have Eric Lloyd with 9 and 10 News. What can be learned from this going forward to avoid issues like this from happening again?
Well, I think it's hard to say that we've ever expected to or expect to again see a moment like this in the global, I think, economic situation we're in because of a health crisis. Certainly we will be looking and reviewing, I think, at all of the capacity we have on our servers, our phone lines. But we have to balance, and I was on with Paul W. Smith this morning, and I think he was even saying, if you had had this kind of capacity prior to the emergency, you would have been criticized for government waste. So there is likely a lot we can do to upgrade our technology to make sure that we have modernized. I know we're in a better place than some states who are even using code from the 1970s to process their systems. But it would be a great thing to have a national system there's a standard potentially of an upgrade to quality apps that could be downloaded on the phones. Each system right now is state by state, and there's not usually a lot of resources out there to modernize it. So I think one of the things we would look for, and we've been talking with folks like Gary Peters and others on the congressional delegation about, is could we use this moment to try to upgrade all of our systems and make sure that we don't have the types of issues if an event like this were to ever occur again.
Jeff, the only thing I would add to that is that we because we have so many new claimants who have never claimed it before, the cracks in our user interface, the areas that raise questions that maybe we hadn't seen before are sort of coming to the surface. And so we've really been focused on getting this new federal CARES Act money out the door and making sure that the 1099s and the self-employed can get the benefits. I think after that is in place, we'll start really working on some of these cracks that we've seen in our system that have this large volume of claimants has exposed, and it'll give us an opportunity to make our system more user friendly, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're also going to try to work with the Department of Labor too on some of the definitions and some of the things that they're requiring of us that may be actually slowing down the process. One example here is, as you certify that you every 2 weeks to be able to get your benefits, you have to say that you're still available for work. Well, in a global pandemic where you may not be available for work because there's no work to be found, or you may not be available to work because you're sick and still qualify for unemployment insurance, that definition may not work in the same way. And so we're trying to work through this and sort of build the plane as we fly it, particularly with getting guidance from the federal government and making sure that we have a standard that is going to make sure every Michigander can get paid without penalty.
All right, and Paula Gardner with Bridge Magazine has a couple of questions. What is the state's weekly total unemployment payout as of this week, and how many beneficiaries does that represent?
So we've paid out $350 million since the pandemic started to about 600,000 individuals. We have about I believe it's 700 right now, 700,000 that have been approved and will be receiving benefits in the coming week. That number is going to jump significantly with the additional $600 of pandemic unemployment assistance that comes out. So I think this last week, which majority was the state benefits, which is up to $362, with a few rounds of the pandemic $600 being added to it, was around, I believe, $240 million for the week. This week will be much higher.
All right, and WXYZ Channel 7 would like to know if you could address underemployment. Can a gig worker, like an Uber driver who's working 40% less than before the pandemic, apply for unemployment, and where can I find the parameters around that eligibility?
So there's certainly the work-share program that we talked about, where individuals who are underemployed can, their employer can apply with us, create an agreement by which they are putting their workers on work-share. We're subsidizing their payroll, and so they're not employed at the full 100%. Steve, do you want to talk about those who've lost hours or lost income elsewhere, though?
Sure. So yeah, we do have underemployment benefits that's in place for state benefits, and so if you would qualify normally, you can apply and you report your wages for the previous 2 weeks, and then those are used to factor in to what your weekly benefit amount would be. That it's only your wages are only counted at about 50 cents on the dollar, and so you get some benefit for continuing to work part-time, and also get benefits. And the other added benefit would be that you get the extra $600 from the CARES Act.
All right, we have time for one last question here. Let's see. Frank Witzel is asking if we are following up with people. Are there any options outside of a phone call, an email, or other ways for people to get help?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time, Erica?
Yes, they're asking about, for those having trouble getting through, are there options for them to get support outside of the phone call? Is there an email or other resource?
Steve, I think you answered that question prior. Do you want to give that answer again?
Sure. So we've, there's an option for online chat during the normal phone hours. And then there's something called a web notice in the online MyWAM system that's like an email directly to us. And then for those that can't get logged in, so that they can't get into the MyWAM system, there's a special notice that they'll get when they try to log in and get an error that will send basically an email to the team that Jeff talked about that deals just with login issues, and then they'll reach back out to the person and help them resolve their login issues.
Okay, well, it sounds like that was the last question. So thank you all for joining us today. We continue to try to answer every question that you might have, and really appreciate the work that you're doing to demystify the unemployment system for a lot of individuals who've never been in this situation. Again, we are committed to making sure that every eligible Michigander receives their benefits, and we're working around the clock and won't rest until that happens. Thank you all for what you're doing, and stay safe.